Extreme weather events will, and in many cases already have, hit transport, power and water networks, and not only in less developed countries. So are governments preparing in the right way? And have we focused too much on mitigation, i.e. doing whatever we can to slow climate change, rather than adaptation, dealing with the effects of climate change now and in the future? So Ziya, Tong, are we doing enough on adaptation?
I would say absolutely, we're not yet doing enough. This hit home for me very viscerally. I'm from British Columbia, where this summer, of course, a heat dome killed 600 people and also killed 1 billion marine animals and fried the town of Lytton, BC. A mere 6 months later, our highways have been washed away by an atmospheric river, and now most of our farmland is 2 meters underwater. There are no adaptation standards in place. And in fact, at COP26 this year, about 79 countries put in adaptation plans. But here's the thing, only 50% of those had implementation strategies. And so those were more like risk assessments. We can see that there might be a problem coming, but what we really need is funding, finance to build and strategize and actually have coherent plans for what we're going to do to adapt. Finally, the thing that we need to address is transboundary adaptation plans. We have to put our John Lennon hats on and realize that many of the concerns we're going to face are going to be regional and not just locked within national boundaries as well.
And Tom, it's an extraordinary figure here. This year, climate disasters could cost the US more than $100 billion in damages. So there's a financial argument for adaptation, isn't there? So what's your take on it? Are we getting that balance between mitigation and adaptation right or not?
Well, I think we haven't. And I mean, you started this section off by saying, have we focused too much on mitigation? You can't focus too much on mitigation because there is a point beyond which we're not going to be able to adapt to the changes. But I think the point is also true there that we also need to focus on adaptation. And that is an issue of justice as much as anything else. I mean, what we're seeing at the moment is the most vulnerable countries are already experiencing the worst impacts of climate change. And when we come to negotiations, such as at COP26, they repeatedly say to the world, look, unless you are prepared to demonstrate global solidarity with us in dealing with the impact of this problem that after all, we haven't caused, then, we need to think about how we can create a deal where we share the mitigation efforts as well. So I would say the two are interlinked. We can only make more progress on mitigation, reducing emissions, if we also demonstrate global solidarity on adaptation, on all of us facing the impacts that are already locked in together.
And Ziya, do you think that the richer countries are more likely to be on board when they experience the effects of climate change themselves? Canada, for example, your home country.
Well, I think that there is definitely growing awareness. We have an adaptation center here at the University of Waterloo. Columbia is doing incredible research. So it is just starting now. But of course, as Tom was just saying, these effects are being felt in the least developed countries right now. And hopefully we're going to see some changes because next year at Sharm el-Sheikh, it's going to play center focus. Really, the next COP27 is going to be focused on adaptation and resilience.
Tom, do you think that's right? And do you think that countries will stump up the cash for those suffering the most?
Well, I mean, the big jump has yet to be made, right? I mean, there was some evidence at COP26 that right now 80 billion of climate finance is flowing every year. Only 25% of that is focused on adaptation. And there was a commitment to double that in the next couple of years at COP26. Now, that is progress, and it's great that we're giving the political airtime to this issue. But just recently, the UN demonstrated that on the emissions trajectory that we're on, adaptation could cost developing countries as much as 300 billion a year by 2030. So we need a new framework in which we think about this, where there is deeper solidarity, where we have the financing mechanisms in place to properly support regeneration of natural systems, support of infrastructure around the world. Because without that, we're going to see really devastating impacts. And it's morally indefensible at a moment where we have spent 19 trillion in just the last year and a half to recover from the COVID pandemic through quantitative easing and other solutions. So as a result of that, we can't really say we can't afford it. We can afford it. We need to demonstrate the determination to do so.